podcast which presents news and current affairs and showcases the ingenuity of people from the African diaspora in the UK and around the world. Hi, so today we're talking about a subject that's really, really important to me. We're talking about neurodiversity. So for our 6th episode, we are talking about neurodiversity support and mentoring. And I'm speaking to someone that I know, Brenda Biko, who does a lot of work in the area. And she founded Apparent Pathways, which is an organisation that supports parents who are raising children and young people that are not just neurodiverse, but also with other challenges and difficulties. So welcome, Brenda.
Thank you. So
nice to have you on the sofa.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, and also it's kind of the organisation. It's all about empowering,
yes.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as a parent mentor, my role is really to empower parents, really to feel confident and establish a sense of agency and control whilst they navigate through the procedural challenges as they advocate for their child.
Wonderful, because I could just see you get a diagnosis and it must be like a minefield. There's so many different things and you don't quite know, and it's completely new to you because parents are doing it for the first times in many cases, aren't they?
Yeah. It's a new experience. It's something that you find yourself in, and just navigating the day-to-day processes and the experiences. It's not a straight line for many. For some it can be, but for others there's a lot of challenges and setbacks and obstacles in trying to ensure that your child, if they have a condition, whether that's autism, ADHD, that impacts their education, trying to actually find support and services to allow them to feel supported whilst they engage in their education can be not as straightforward as some people may think.
Yeah. Okay. So Brenda has been working with families and children within their communities for a decade in a variety of roles. As an independent advocate, you've been supporting children, young people and their families as part of child protection proceedings. You've been working with local authorities, family service teams, and as an intervention specialist. Okay, brilliant. Sounds really interesting. I really want to know a lot more about that. And also you're a psychology postgraduate, and you've got a lot of awarding ontological experience as a fellow parent. And also that allows, your professional background and your education and being a fellow parent, just I think gives you a bit of an edge, doesn't it? Because a lot of people that I've dealt with haven't had first-hand experience in many cases.
Definitely. I mean, you've described it really well. So as a parent, it's definitely that lived experience of actually something that's really close to your heart, guiding your child through that process. And then as a professional, coming from that perspective, and then obviously engaging with the systems and processes. So it comes from looking through all those perspectives, and then also like implementing my academic background. So it's a perfect opportunity really to bring them all together to sort of look at what the current situation is and provide tools to be able to support other parents to move through them.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, brilliant. That's such a wonderful introduction. So I really look forward to really getting into kind of navigating, getting into labelling, and talking more about the service that you provide as the episode goes on. So and also doing our icebreaker when we come back. Okay, welcome back. So we're here with Brenda Biko, founder of Apparent Pathway, and our topic for today is neurodiversity support and mentoring. And Brenda is a parent mentor. So, time for the icebreaker. You ready?
Yeah.
Right. So, what is your favourite medium, be it film, television, music, art, radio? And what are your favourite 3 offerings in that medium?
Sorry to be complicated.
Oh,
but
no. I knew it. Go on.
The reason is I find it really difficult to have 3 of one particular medium. So
Yeah.
if you don't mind, I like to mix and match it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So yeah, films. I'm not a huge film fan, but I'd say my first favourite film is Bugsy Malone.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You know what? My other half actually loves that film, and he was in the School Musical, so he sings the songs all the time.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's got that. It's really joyful.
Yeah.
It's I mean, what I love about it is like my 5-year-old self just loves the fact that there are the kids that there's a lot of adversity in there, and like the characters going from something that you wouldn't expect, like such as Blousey, and then you've got like Babyface. They're like the underdogs, and then all of a sudden they they have
If
these
you wanna
talents.
be a
Oh my
boxer.
goodness, definitely my Christmas favourite. So yeah, definitely. I love Bugsy Malone. So,
Oh,
yeah.
amazing. And then my name is Tallulah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know all the lyrics, but I remember those lines. Oh, brilliant. Okay, so you've got a musical. That's great. And with kids in it as well. That's brilliant. And what's your others? What's your second?
So the second one, I mean, I thought maybe TV documentaries.
Okay.
So second one I would say is I find it difficult pronouncing his name, but David
Olusoga, is it? Is it
Olusoga.
Olusoga? Something
Yes.
like that, yeah.
A House Through
Historian,
Time.
yeah.
I love that documentary on
Which
the
one?
BBC.
Say that
As
again.
A House Through Time.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. I mean, I think there's only about 4 seasons, but
Yeah,
when
yeah.
that comes on, it's like Christmas. I love the whole the house stays the same, and then people through the times, the different people that live there, and they don't know each other, and they all have different backgrounds, but yet the house stays the same. So I love that.
Oh, that's brilliant. I actually haven't seen that. I've seen a lot of his documentaries, and I've got a couple of titles by him, books, but I haven't seen that. So that's something that I've got to check out. I'll add that to my list. My list is ever growing, but this sounds very interesting, because I've seen the one where it's not the one where they recreate a household in the past.
Oh yeah. Oh, I like that as
Yeah,
well.
do you like that as well? Because I've
yeah.
seen that one.
Yeah.
And
No,
when you
that's
first
really
said
good.
it, I thought, oh, is it that one? And then it was obvious that it wasn't, and it was that it was actual real people. Is it?
Yeah, so it's going through like the historical census
Of the house.
So the house stays the same. So
wow.
there's ones where the house, you go through the Blitz, and it goes through so many several wars, and then you've got people from the different eras, what their roles were, and it's just so interesting. And then it brings it to the present day, and then it just so much to think about in terms of
wow,
so,
that's a really interesting one. It's quite different from some of the other stuff that we've had in the past. That's interesting. Oh wow. I'll check that out. And what's your third?
The third, I do like Who Do You Think You Are?
I love that show.
Yeah.
Oh my God, don't leave me hanging. I love that show. I love it. I love that show.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I just think it's amazing, and like even to have the opportunity to do that, and and the whole fact that you don't know, what it can be, and then you've got your assumptions of
of what your ancestors actually were like, or what they did.
Yeah,
oh, brilliant!
Yeah.
I watched the one that was on the other night, and with Ed Balls. Did you watch that one?
No, I saw the female presenter that went back to Jamaica. I can't, but then mind you, I did watch it on iPlayer, so it's probably not been
Oh yeah.
yet,
Oh, I'm trying to. Is she the football pundit lady? I can't remember her name. I'm so sorry.
Alex something, but
I think so. She's really good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because I read about that, because she was connected to slave owners. I think was it that one?
Yes, definitely. And
yeah.
she had like then the other side had a Jewish background from the West End, it's just so.
I've started watching that one actually. I'm going to go back to it, but no, that's interesting. It's interesting that you had. Did you have 2 factual?
Yeah, 2
ones?
documentaries.
2 documentaries.
Yeah.
I actually love documentaries.
Yeah.
as well. And I like kind of being part of creating something like that and also watching. And then remind me of your first one again.
Bugsy Malone. Yeah.
Oh, Bugsy Malone, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone needs a bit of Bugsy Malone, especially at Christmas.
Yeah.
Brilliant, topical, love it. Okay, so we're going to go to our break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about neurodiverse versus SEND, so special educational needs and disabilities.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so we can get back. Okay, welcome back to our 6th episode, Neurodiversity Support and Mentoring. And we're going to start. So we're going to talk about neurodiverse versus SEND, which is special educational needs and disabilities. Okay, so what do you prefer? Or what do you find that, more importantly, what do you find that your clients and their children prefer?
I mean, with both particular description, I think at times there's not necessarily a preference, but what is understood. So, for example, like neurodiverse is that allows people to focus on what the actual challenge is and what that lived experience is of that individual.
Yeah.
So we know that it's around their ability, their abilities to function in terms of how their brain functions, whereas special educational needs and disabilities refers to a particular individual having a disability. So within the disability community, you know, disabilities come in all forms: physical, hidden disability is another word that another phrase that can be used for diverse, neurodiverse. So neurodiverse is more specific. However, special educational needs, I would describe as a parent, is a term that you adopt. So
it's like a system term, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like one that applies to being in the institution.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's how it's recognised. Because if you say special educational needs, then everyone knows what's that, what that is about, what is expected, what does it mean, what is required. So it's like from the moment, so myself as a parent that's raised a young person that has neurodiversity and other conditions, when those conditions are identified, it's like you fall into a system, and then from there you get those terms and you're known as specifically perhaps someone under special educational needs register or someone that is on the path to having a educational healthcare plan. So all these labels link. In a parent pathway, I tend to say individual needs and differences, because each person is unique.
Yeah, so, and I feel that, you know, neurodiverse, and obviously there's lots of different disabilities that aren't neurodiverse, don't come under that kind of term or description. But I think that definitely neurodiverse is a step closer to individual, understanding the individual. So, you know, you're kind of putting the onus on that they think differently rather than they have a disability in a way.
Yes. Yeah. So it directs the focus in terms of how they see the world. So neurodiverse individuals may have, for example, ADHD, dyslexia, autism. So it provides an understanding that the way they function is in relation to how they see the world, because then on the other side, people refer to others as neurotypical. So it's that age-old argument of, you know, equity and equality. So when seen by the majority, you've got the neurotypical and then you've got the neurodiverse. And also recognizing that as individuals we can see the same thing differently, and what is good about that is that there are learning styles that can work together, rather than being seen separately as requiring a special
educational needs.
So with the
also, sorry Brenda, but also I just feel a little bit like, you know, having worked in education, I feel that, you know, special educational needs and disabilities, unfortunately, sometimes it becomes, okay, well, that model has suited this child who also displays symptoms of this difference or difficulty, so I can adapt and use this method with the other child, and all the children in the class that have this diagnosis, I can use this way, and it again becomes a bit uniform at times. I don't know what your experience has been.
Yeah, it can be challenging. So, for example, if the choice is for a young person to be in a mainstream setting, so the majority is deemed as neurotypical, so then you've got the neurodiverse. In terms of teachings, there are policies and even the constructs of like the school. So you've got like, you know, assemblies, you've got classrooms, you've got rules, things that need to be followed. And some of those things come with challenges for an individual that may have like neurodiversity, and approaching their supporting them to engage in things can be done differently. But if there are different ways of doing that, then it becomes more inclusive. So my experience would be that when raising my son, what I found is that it was dependent on the teacher. So you've got some teachers that use a particular learning style, and what you find is it's quite engaging and inclusive to everyone, and that's really their approach. And you'd find, you know, everyone enjoys it, but then
so it's teaching style, isn't it? It's their teaching style.
It's a teaching style, but where it gets difficult is that if a school as a whole has a particular way of doing things, that you may have a particular teacher that has a teaching style that is different, but yet if they have another subject, you know, their style will be different. So then the experience for the young person is up and down, so it's not consistent, and there is an expectation at times to behave in a consistent way. I've not mentioned this, but I'm dyslexic, so, you know, I've got a learning difficulty or a special educational need and disability, and I'm neurodiverse. So I completely get that, because there was some teachers that I had nothing personal against them, but the way that they taught me just did not click with my brain at all. And then there were other teachers who were amazing and who really brought the subjects to life. So is there a particular kind of learning style or teaching style that neurodiverse individuals click with, or are they actually all different? So, for example, when I was teaching, we learned about kinesthetic learning, visual, aural, what else was there? Gosh, it was a while. But they're all these different ways of teaching, and we were encouraged to learn about the learning styles of the individuals in our class, so that we can make lessons kind of interactive, more engaging. But I would guess that maybe in mainstream, and this is no discredit to the teachers, it's an extra challenge to kind of do that in mainstream education, certainly in secondary school. No, I mean, I can't necessarily say that across the board, but I guess that's why it's such a unique situation, because every individual is different. So, for example, one person that has autism will be different from another. So one will relate to one learning style, and another would not relate to the same learning style and prefer a completely different learning style. It's one of those things where there's just so many different factors to consider. But I guess because it's interesting that you mentioned about that, because we did actually share the same education.
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
we went to the same school.
Yeah, we did.
And myself as an adult was diagnosed with ADHD.
Yeah.
So, and actually, ironically, recently there was a lot of parents like known in the mainstream, like celebrities, that are now coming out saying that they have diagnosis as adults. So there was a recent.
I was diagnosed as an adult as well.
Yeah, and and then through.
How old were you?
As an adult, I was when I was diagnosed with ADHD, I was probably in my mid-30s.
Wow.
So the reason that I was actually so when my son was diagnosed with autism and ADHD, it was just really interesting as I was getting information from support groups, from consultants, and then when I was looking at the situation and I recognizing that was actually quite familiar, so then it just made me curious to actually look into having a diagnosis. And then there was a realization that actually, I myself also have a condition. But like you were saying before, in our education many decades ago, it wasn't something that was even acknowledged or even identified. And even looking back, I can't even imagine where that would have happened.
No.
So
yeah, exactly. I mean, and I think that the kind of standards were quite high, and it was assumed that everyone with a bit of an effort could kind of access the work. And because I don't even remember, because when I was teaching, I remember you had to differentiate, and you would take account of the challenges that some people face, and you differentiate and perhaps give a different tool to one of the students or another student to help them access the work, whether it was yellow paper, whether it was something kinesthetic that they could use, whether it was note paper or extra or the slides. But when I was at school and when we were at school, can you imagine one of our teachers giving us an extra resource?
Yeah.
No.
There was I guess that there was a lot of conformity.
Yeah.
And I think what is recognised also is that with conditions such as like autism, there is masking. So what you find is that individuals will mask their challenges, and they won't actually let people know that they'll just conform to what's happening. And I think the really good thing about and there's still a lot to continue with, is the awareness. I think now, because there is more awareness about conditions such as autism and ADHD, it allows parents to sort of question things and ask about things and inquire. And there isn't a stigma or anything like that, because obviously before my son was diagnosed, like I was actually quite shocked when I thought about it that I don't actually know much about it other than what was perceived in mainstream media. So, for example, from my understanding of ADHD, the discussions were just basically about people that have ADHD, their destiny is this, and I
think there's the assumption that people with ADHD are extremely badly behaved.
Yeah, that's the thing. When conditions go unrecognised, what happens is the behaviours just manifest over a period of time. So for parents, that's really difficult, because you can observe and you can see that your child is going for long periods without support, and then you're identifying their lagging skills, you're identifying their frustrations to try to actually engage. They're doing as much as they can, but they don't necessarily first understand why or know what to ask for in terms of support. So when parents start initiating the process based on what they're observing, it allows things to move, but the journey is not as easy. And
also I think we talked a little bit about labels, although we didn't really get into it very deeply, I don't think. But I just think being transparent is so helpful, especially with young people, because young people are fine. It's the adults that have the issues. Young people are absolutely fine with knowing that a classmate is autistic when they know what it is. The children are absolutely fine with it.
I mean, it does depend in terms of people's beliefs.
Yeah.
So in terms of families' beliefs, society's beliefs, and understanding, it comes with judgments, expectations and assumptions based on lack of knowledge. And what I find is that now people are more open to talking about it. It's like, this is what the situation is. What can we do about it?
Yeah.
But there are still, parents that, even though they can recognise, but they don't want to attach a label to it. They don't want to go down that route.
Do you think labels are helpful?
For some parents, they are helpful because the label provides an understanding of what should actually happen, where things can go, and what needs to happen. But for others, it does come with discrimination. It does come with a lot of judgment, and which doesn't necessarily belong to the child, but it can be from, extended family, like communities. It can be, parents have to actually deal with these narratives within society about, say, for example, autistic children, this is how their behaviour manifests and it's causing problems, and, ADHD, an assumption about violence and aggressive behaviour. And when it's put in that context, then there is, for some parents, that it gives that uncomfortable feeling of actually saying that, yes, this is what the situation is, because they've taken on board all these assumptions.
Yeah. And also, I think, sometimes it can, and obviously what you said explains that as well and takes into account of this, but also cultural things. So, cultural stigmas, or ways of ways of perceiving young people, children, or even adults with a difficulty or a challenge. Culturally, obviously we know about mainstream culture in the UK, but also culturally from, different kind of cultures and backgrounds. I remember, working with a parent who just would not have the label, kept it really secret, didn't even tell me that their child had a diagnosis on first meeting them until I'd noticed myself and said, actually, and they said, oh yes, but we don't like to tell people. And for me, it was apparent that it was actually also a cultural idea or stigma that they had amongst their community. Yeah.
No, that's definitely the experience that I've had. What you find in different communities and community groups, that they, based on how a condition is perceived, some believe that, that they could be possessed, or there's some, there's something wrong with them, that they shouldn't be seen, that they should be not seen, or let's not talk about.
Well, there's some shame associated.
Yeah, shame. And then to be able to feel empowered, because with that, what that can do is actually restrict the support that that young person, as you said, that young person can access. And if a parent chooses to actually respond in that way, there are missed opportunities and possibilities for the child to thrive. And I think with the work that I do, it's really supporting parents to recognise the impact that these, these beliefs may have, and then be able to make an informed decision how they want to actually approach that, and the impact that it has on them and the impact that it has on their child. But every parent has the choice to parent how they wish, and there are parents that choose not to associate a label or attach a label to their child's condition, and still support them to navigate through the procedures and the system, the educational system. So it is a personal choice.
Yeah.
But when it gets difficult and it gets challenging, it does help to look into how that impacts.
Because labels can be helpful and they can be a hindrance, can't they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, definitely they can. And also associating yourself to those labels, because that's not something that you would give yourself. So I mean, even the language used, like from when my son was diagnosed like 12 years ago, the terms that we use then are no longer used now. And when you talk about special educational needs and disabilities, there are some people, parents, families that don't want to use that word. The second that you use that word,
Yeah,
then
I
they're
mean,
very
there's a lot
reluctant.
of kind of, there's a lot, I mean, using the word special, I mean, there's a lot of kind of connotations and kind of mockery that revolve around using the term special to describe an individual or the needs that an individual has.
Yeah, there's a lot of words. I mean, special just really it is what's used, because when you say special, educational needs, and they're like, right, I know what you're talking about. But at the same time, who gave that word?
Yeah.
And words do evolve over time, so things will change. But it's with many labels, and I guess it's attaching yourself to those particular labels and taking them on as your own.
Yeah.
But then within the system, having to use those labels does become challenging.
Thank you. So we'll come back to talk about our second part, which is about support and navigating those systems, which is what you just talked about. Okay, so we're back with Brenda Biko, founder of Apparent Pathway, and we're talking about neurodiversity, support and mentoring. So we're on our second section, and we are talking about support and navigation. So support and navigation, that makes me think of policy, makes me think of money. Yeah. So how much money have they got? No, I'm only joking. Tell me. So what kind of problems have you experienced, in your professional role around, support and navigating the policy that's in place?
I mean, it's no secret with most things within, like, say, healthcare and things like that. It's all around the budgets, and that's what the challenge is. So there are statistics that show that the diagnosis of young people with conditions is increasing, and in terms of the provisions, the support, access to schools, there's a lot of lack around that. So with the increase of numbers, what's happening,
and the backlog, I would imagine, the backlog of diagnoses and people waiting, because I'm just thinking, you see an educational psychologist, and over the last year, 2 years now, we've been dealing with this pandemic, so I would imagine that there's quite the backlog.
Yeah, there always has been. There's always been long waiting lists. Like, the first hurdle is not necessarily just having a diagnosis, and even getting a diagnosis that, like my son, it took many attempts, because there are so many things. Like, as a parent, you alone cannot state that, even if you go to your GP, that you believe this will be the case, and then provisions are provided to you. So it really does require input coming from the local authority, from teachers, to then even move to that part. And then after that, then it's ensuring that the right school is available and whether they have those provisions in place. So a lot of children require a legal document, such as an educational healthcare plan, and that really allows their condition to be monitored as they engage in their education, and it allows them to access schools, resources, teaching assistance, so that they're able to build on their abilities and strengthen their weaknesses. But for many, they don't actually get to that point, and that's where it's known for parents to fight, to have to spend thousands at tribunal to even have their child's situation acknowledged, and to even like, for example, my son, he has the diagnosis, he has the education plan, but even still, making sure that the service and access to the support is consistent and available is also a challenge. So within the UK, there's a postcode lottery, depending on where you live, you know, what is available. You can live in one borough and they won't have those facilities available. And you can live in another county or borough and have a completely different experience. So there's no consistency across the board. And what happens is that teachers and schools are using creative ways to really compensate really for the lack of funding, and that's where the frustration for parents and the young person comes from.
But when I was thinking about before the show as well, is also, you know, the choice between, and in some cases obviously it's not a choice, between mainstream and you know, specific schools that kind of have more resources perhaps to support children or learners with neuro differences and challenges and disabilities. I mean, that must be part of the navigation as well, right?
Yeah, so independent and specialist schools require funding. So, you know, funding can be from like 45,000 a year. So that comes from the local authority. And before it even gets to that stage, it has to be assessed. So for parents, they have to actually justify, ensure that things are recognised. And there is a bit of a fight and a lot of assessments that need to have to go through before it even gets to that stage. And then once... And even that's not even guaranteed itself. And these independent schools, there's not many of them available. But what happens is if a parent and a child chooses to stay within the mainstream school, then support to accommodate their challenges can be put in place. And that also requires funding too. Yeah.
So, and who is kind of representing the parent? Who's fighting the parent's corner? Who's reading the documentation and filling the forms with them? Because I would imagine, you know, I have difficulty enough filling in, you know, your standard forms that I have to complete for, you know, just household things. Do you know what I mean? I'm just trying to think of you know, the actual forms that you have to fill and the paperwork that you have to do and manage, and you know, when you have a child.
No, you're definitely right. I mean, the paperwork is like immense in terms of like applying, and then you've got to know dates, and there's time scales, so things don't happen immediately. You know, you can have 20 weeks, and even before that you need to get authorization. You have meetings, like constant meetings and reviews, just to even talk about the situation. And then you have meetings where it involves lots of consultants, and consultants, professionals, occupational therapists, educational psychologists, and they all contribute their feedback. And then, you know, as a parent, it's just ensuring that you're there at those meetings, that you've made your contributions to those particular reports, because
and then, you know, your rights, right?
Well, that's the thing, because parents can fall into two categories. They can either be the one that shouts the loudest and like, no, you will do this, and I'm gonna, you know, really, you know, go at it at full force, or you've got the ones that may be avoidant. The ones will be like, you know, I don't want to make, you know, noise, and, you know, they told me that this will happen, I'll just wait and see. And, you know, in some cases there is disappointment, because it does require like being involved in ensuring and connecting and guiding the process. And the parent's role is really beneficial, because they are the consistent person within the whole process through the duration of the child's experience, because teachers will come and go, schools will change, professionals will leave. So parents being, you know, that really important role is important. But like you say, it is a job that is burdensome. It's not something that you're willing to ignore, but it's not something that, you know, you really want to get on and do, but you'll do it because that's your child and that is what is required. And, you know, if you don't know what the consequences are, then the system decides what happens for your child, and that's where you get difficulties such as exclusions
and disempowered.
completely disempowered, because then you feel that you've lost control, because before you know it, your child hasn't been receiving the support. Their challenges manifest, their behaviours, increase, and, the support starts to not be consistent. And then that's where, exclusions happen, and there's more of a chance of it going down that route when it's not supported, and, things are not on top of it. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so this leads us perfectly onto the next thing we're going to talk about, doesn't it? Really, because we've talked about the difficulties, I think, of navigating the kind of endless paperwork, the meetings, the kind of being a driving force for things remaining consistent. And I think we also therefore need to talk about what you've been doing in your professional life around supporting parents with this kind of minefield. So when we come back, we'll be talking about mentoring specifically. Okay, so we're back. We've talked about neurodiversity. We've talked about special educational needs and disabilities and labelling. We've talked about the paperwork and navigating that, and now we're going to talk about what you do specifically, and how so did you have someone like you when you were going through it with your son?
No, I mean, for most parents, they probably had friends to talk to. Myself, it was, other parents, just having someone on the phone to vent. And, self-care is really important for parents, because what you experience, the emotional fatigue, is a lot. It does take a toll. As mentioned before, the system doesn't actually support a parent's emotional well-being, and the responsibility is really on the parent. So the service that I support parents with, it does provide that safe space to be able to come together and sort of discuss what it is that they are experiencing, and be able to gain some clarity of how to approach that. And through that, what parents find useful is that when they walk away, is knowing that from having that support, they're able to approach things in a way that they don't betray themselves. Because what you find is that when parents actually approach things, they may not say how they really feel. They may not ask those right questions, because in the moments there's just so much going on.
Yeah.
And because what I find is that parents are engaging in the process, but they're not empowered. And the same way, they are actually searching for information, but they still find themselves feeling lost.
Yeah, and they don't know, like with anything, like you talked about consultants earlier, but I just feel when you are dealing with professionals, there are there's a language, isn't there?
Yeah.
There are key terms. There's a language that they will see and recognise that will spark action or not. And if a parent is sitting there engaging but struggling for words or what to say, or knowing how to give them the extra push.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah. No, because you go to the GP, you only get like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
5 minutes to explain everything that you're experiencing, and then you speak to a consultant that obviously comes with like abundance of information, and then you're sitting in those meetings and you've got other things on your mind, and then you're trying to think, what information do I take in, what don't I take in, what do I need to then
communicate,
to then go off and mention that to add feedback to the process. So that's where it helps to have clarity. It's like what's what and where, because during the process in those meetings, professionals such as teachers, the local authority, they have meetings prior to meeting. They liaise with each other. They've done it before with other parents. No child is the same, and sometimes there is an assumption that I worked with Johnny and he had the same condition, so the same thing needs to apply for you. So, you know, they're able to take that information and then bring it to
a repertoire.
Yes. Whereas parents, they're just going in blind. They're going with the knowledge, because I think nowadays there is a good support network, and it is important because when, for example, as you know, we went to school together, you know, if you told me, you know, what is autism, what happens, you wouldn't know. So the second that you have that information, you're like, oh, what does it mean? Luckily there's things like, you know, the internet, and you can look up that information, but it does help.
And it can be, I would imagine, kind of relying solely on the internet. It's a bit like an information overload, and also it's tricky because, you know, you're trying to work out what's a valid source, what should I, you know, what is my go-to source, what is useful, what is less useful, and there's that whole kind of deciding what to read and what to take in, as well. And excuse me. And I would imagine that's quite a challenge, because you know, that you get, it's overwhelming, isn't it?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, what I support parents with is to stay focused. There's so many things. There's got, you know, to understand what the different roles that people do. What does an educational psychologist, what is the consultant going to do? What is a therapist going to do with your child? To take that information and know all that information. And then there's the condition itself, and it's like, what information do you take to support, you know, your child? So it does, you know, as you said, it's mystifying. How do you take all that information? How do you approach it? And how do you move forward when there's like challenges and things like that? And it is an isolating experience. So currently parents do have an option to have an advocate, so an advocate to come with them in the meeting, and that is really helpful because it provides some like moral support. But there are moments where there isn't anyone around, so that might be having an informal conversation with the teacher at the end of the day, and being clear about what it is that you want to communicate, and not losing yourself in the moment, feeling angry or focusing on things that are not as important.
And not painting the broader context, but getting to the succinct points that you want to make.
Yes, exactly. It helps parents to move through it a lot quicker and more effectively. And because I always use the analogy of like a pressure cooker, there's so many interactions where you deal with it for the short term, and you're like, right, I've dealt with it, but over time it builds up. When you're dealing with you know, someone that's got a lifelong condition, it's not just for a moment in time.
So the long game,
so you have to build that emotional endurance over a period of time. So constantly, you know, fighting and saying is just such a really heavy energy place to be, that doesn't necessarily it's got its place in some parts, and it's understandable. I've had to do that myself,
and like you say, emotionally exhausting.
Yes, exactly. And at the end of the day, you know, the parent is needed, so to be able to navigate through that for the long term is what the support that I provide parents with, so that they can actually go out there and respond in real time with the right information needed.
Brilliant. And so what has your feedback been like from parents?
I mean, many parents, it's just the weight of their shoulder. It's just having that clarity of like, okay, now I see the direction that I need to go. You know, I'm not going to deviate from what I want my child to experience or how I wish to parent. And it does, you know, relieve some tension in that moment in time, and also build on their confidence, because for many parents it's like not knowing what to ask or what to say, and even being able to have that space to even discuss it with someone that's been through it and understands it, just allows them to feel that, you know what, they're not alone. And and also the main thing is really to allow parents to bring the joy back into parenting, because a lot of proportion of that emotional worry is, I mean, let's face it, it's got nothing to do with the parent or the child. It's other factors such as budgets, the systems and resources, lack of resources, eligibility criteria. So it's like,
and are you finding that you're connecting with them a lot, because they might say, oh, this happened today with you know, Scarlett, or whatever the individual's name is, you know, this happened today? And are you finding that, you know, you're having those, oh yeah, that's happened to me so many times moments kind of thing? Yes, I get it completely, kind of, because you know, we said earlier that you bring your kind of your experience of personally having been a parent with a child that is neurodiverse and has kind of different challenges. So are you finding that sometimes you're able, would you say your experience allows you to connect with the parents because you have been in their shoes and can relate and also have experienced some of the things that they tell you they're experiencing?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, no experience is the same, but however, the feelings are similar. And yeah, definitely, it's a shared experience. So it's recognising, because us as parents, we tend to see what others don't see.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're sort of like expressing, how you feel, how you want things, how you wish for things to be, sometimes it's like, you think, well, why are they not able to see that? And, like I describe that as blind spots. It's like, as a parent, guiding that through your experience and just guiding the process to support their child. So, yeah, I think it's within the community of parents, we have experienced similar things. And there is that, people may say that, oh, it's not as bad as you think. Oh, it can't be that bad. Or I know such and such, this happened to him. All our experiences are different. So, many times parents feel that their feelings and their views are dimmed down or overlooked, but they are valid. I mean, I don't feel parents need to gain validation from other people. They know more than what they give themselves credit for.
It's that at least thing, isn't it? When you tell someone about an experience and they go, well, at least, da, 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 da. And it's kind of, you've just kind of cancelled what I've just said.
Yeah.
Well, at least this is happening. Oh, well, this. Look on the bright side. This is happening.
Yeah. That is difficult to take in because, when you actually experience it, like, people can hear things and they can make assumptions. And like even another parent that's got a similar situation, they could see another parent probably looks to them that, oh, well, Johnny's getting this. Why am I not getting that? And that all this adds to, it clouds the parent's belief. But it comes with the experience and it's understandable. And I think parents do need to be, I think an empathetic approach is really important in supporting parents, and also having some patience and some understanding. That definitely does help. Yeah.
So do you, in your practice, do you ever have because obviously you're doing the mentoring, which is 1-to-1 or with the both parents in some cases, or carers or guardians. But do you ever have moments where it's a group? Do you have any group situations where it might be a group of parents or what kind of thing?
Groups work. I mean, at the moment, I'm not doing any groups. I do have some relatable content that I've put on YouTube really for parents if they can relate to that, and if anything on there that they
wonderful.
resonate.
What is your YouTube actually?
So it's a Parent Pathway. So
nice and easy.
Yeah, Parent Pathway. Yeah. I've put some content on there that's like relatable, and not every parent has experienced it, but it just really provides some insight for parents to look at the bigger picture and sort of like be able to take what resonates for them, because it is individual. But yeah, 1-to-1 support. There is an option for groups in the future, because having that those interactions with people that have been through it as well is also adds and becomes empowering as well. So yeah.
Oh, brilliant! It all sounds really interesting and really valuable, because I have a cousin. I've got two cousins. I've got a cousin and a second cousin that have autism, and I know that my aunt had to really persistently kind of almost lobby the school, and it was a great challenge. So I just think if she had someone like you during those times, it would have just been so kind of helpful. To not just know that someone else has been through it, but also someone who's gone through it has the wealth of information and the professional knowledge as well, and for signposting purposes, for building her own confidence, for empowering her, like you say. I think that would have been invaluable. So another thing I wanted to just talk about slightly, I remembered it whilst you were talking, was about, it's totally slipped my mind. I'm going to come back to it shortly. But you've got a YouTube channel, you've got an Instagram. Your Instagram is the name of your organisation, which is A Parent Pathway. So I've been having a look at some of your Instagram content as well. So you know, that's, I think for anyone who is interested, that's a great place to start, and then leading it onto your other resources. Yeah. And you know, getting in contact with the organisation as well. Oh gosh, it was. This is it. It was about rites of passage, and because you were talking about parents and how they see their children's lives, and I always think, obviously, you know, I'm not a parent myself, but I've got lots of kids who I look after and teach, and young people as well who I look after. But I always think, you know, you kind of, you just believe that your children have these rites of passage that you've been through yourself, that they will go through themselves. And for some parents, you know, those things can be different. Those experiences or those rites of passage can be different, or they may need to do something a little bit different to facilitate those things. So, you know, so how is that? Does that kind of thing come up?
I mean, as you're talking, what I think about is that there is an expectation that if you have special educational needs label, your pathway is seen that you go in a certain direction.
Yeah.
So, like, my personal experience was that when we were looking at like colleges and open days, we would have conversations and they would engage with us and they'd talk about the course. But the second that you mentioned that actually, you know, my son's on, you know, special educational needs, then it would be like, and then there's an expectation that perhaps, oh, try this or try that. That firstly isn't his choice. And also that's not, you know, in terms of his ambitions, that is not some, you know, that's not necessarily a direction that he would like to go on. So there is a lot of assumptions and expectations that their particular pathway is to go down this particular direction because they have this label or this particular condition or they're on this particular register. And as a parent, being empowered to actually take on some judgments if you do choose something that is not preferable or expected can be quite difficult. So that is really something, you know, a situation where you can stay empowered to make sure that that happens. And for example, mentioning there are many young people that have conditions where the way they function doesn't necessarily suit a particular like policy within the school. So, you know, they have a condition, but that's where the grey area of it doesn't abide with their behaviour policy, which leads them down the route of a possible exclusion. And for many young people, they may spend some time away from school because they're waiting for the right school to appear, or, you know, they're waiting with those waiting lists that you mentioned before, which gives them a lot of time out of school. And this impacts their, you know, employment, it, you know, what it looks like for them going forward, their self-esteem, you know, what are their prospects because of this, which has got nothing to do with them, but the system. And unfortunately, you know, for some, it may hinder their progress, but that's where parents can come in and ensure that, well, actually, yes, this may be the case, but I would like to look into this, or I would like to guide the process in a way that this happens and my child gets to experience this instead. So, yeah.
Brilliant. It's been amazing talking to you, actually. I feel like I've learned so much, and I think there's so much more to kind of engage with and learn. And I would recommend, you know, people kind of looking at your resources, but also reaching out. So how would, if somebody he felt that your service would be helpful for them, how would they make contact or reach out to you? Would it be through your website or
visit my website and send me an email.
What's your
and then
website?
We can so it is aparentpathway.com.
Okay.
So just get in contact with me and we can have a discovery call and we can look at what the current situation, and if it's something that I can support you with, I'll be happy to.
Wonderful. Okay, that's the close of our show. Thank you so much, Brenda. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I feel, you know, like I've gained so much myself from having this conversation with you, and I'm sure our listeners and viewers would have done the same. So again, thank you so much. And so it's www.apparentpathway.com. Brilliant. Okay, thank you for listening, everybody. This has been Planet Diaspora, 6th episode, neurodiversity, support and mentoring. I've been your host, Sandra Volset, and we've been talking to the lovely Brenda Biko in this episode. Okay, thank you everybody for listening to the 6th episode of Planet Diaspora, which has been about neurodiversity, support and mentoring, with our lovely guest Brenda Biko from Apparent Pathway. Please do subscribe, share and comment, and also be aware that we are available on iTunes, Spotify, Anchor, Google Play, and you can watch the episode on YouTube. Thank you so much. We've also got an Instagram, which is planet.diaspora, and our Facebook is Planet Diaspora as well. So do reach out, do follow us and share, and enjoy your holiday, and happy Christmas to those who celebrate.